For more than 200 years, this land has been the final chapter in the stories of empires. It has witnessed ambition turn to ashes and power dissolve into dust. To the world, Afghanistan is a battlefield, but to history, it is a graveyard. Even in defeat, the world cannot turn away, because somewhere beneath these mountains lies something more powerful than oil, more valuable than gold: influence. Whoever holds Afghanistan holds the gateway to Asia and the attention of the world's most powerful nations. This is Decode Empires, and today we uncover the story of a land no one could conquer, and why two global powers, the United States and China, can't seem to leave it alone. Long before drones and diplomats, Afghanistan was the intersection of civilizations, where empires collided, traded, and died. Its deserts witnessed the march of Alexander the Great, its valleys absorbed the ambitions of the British Raj, and its mountains broke the iron will of the Soviet Union. Geography is destiny, and Afghanistan's geography is both its greatest gift and its eternal curse. It sits like a crossroads between six nations: Iran, Pakistan, China, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan. It connects the Middle East to Central Asia and Central Asia to South Asia, a bridge between continents, yet always a barrier to conquerors. Its mountains rise like natural fortresses, its people bound by tribes more loyal to valleys than to borders. Every invader learned the same lesson. You can occupy Afghanistan, but you cannot control it. The visuals are brutal and repetitive. The British retreating from Kabul in 1842, their army annihilated by guerrilla tribesmen. The Soviets in 1979, their tanks burning in the dust. Empires came with flags and left with coffins. The British called it their eastern frontier, the Soviets their socialist mission, the Americans their war on terror. History, however, calls it something else: the place where superpowers go to die. In the 1800s, the British Empire and Tsarist Russia fought a secret war, not with armies, but with spies, bribes, and manipulation. Historians called it the Great Game. Its prize: control over Central Asia, and above all, Afghanistan. The country became a buffer between two giants, the British in India and the Russians advancing from the north. Neither could afford to let the other dominate this landlocked region. For Britain, Afghanistan was the shield that protected India, the jewel of its empire. For Russia, it was the southern gate to the Indian Ocean. Whoever controlled Kabul could open or close the doors of Asia. But the Afghans resisted both, fiercely. Empires rose and fell at their borders, but no foreign flag could claim their mountains. The Great Game ended with maps redrawn, treaties signed, and countless lives lost. Yet its spirit never died, because even after the empires faded, the board remained, and new players took their place. When the Soviets invaded Afghanistan in 1979, they believed they could remake it, modernize it, control it, reshape it into their image. But they underestimated one thing: history's curse. The Afghan resistance, fueled by tribal loyalty and foreign weapons, fought the Soviets for a decade. The United States saw an opportunity to turn Afghanistan into the Soviet Union's own Vietnam. Through the CIA, America poured millions of dollars into arming the Mujahideen, freedom fighters who would later become warlords, and eventually, the Taliban. For the U.S., it was a victory of ideology. For Afghanistan, it was the birth of chaos. The Soviet Union finally withdrew in 1989. Broken, humiliated, and soon after collapsed entirely. It was another empire's funeral in the graveyard of empires. And America learned something dangerous: that Afghanistan could destroy a superpower without firing a single missile of its own. The Cold War ended, but Afghanistan did not find peace. Its warlords turned on each other. Cities were reduced to rubble, and amidst the ruins, a new power emerged from the south: the Taliban. By the late 1990s, Afghanistan had become a land ruled by shadows. But the world would soon turn its gaze here again, after a single devastating morning in 2001. After the 9/11 attacks, America vowed to destroy the Taliban and eliminate al-Qaeda. The war that began as vengeance soon became a mission to rebuild a nation and reshape a region. At first, the U.S. achieved lightning success. The Taliban fell within weeks, and Washington promised to bring democracy, education, and freedom to a war-torn land. But the Americans, like the British and the Soviets before them, believed they could change Afghanistan's destiny. But Afghanistan has never been a land to be changed, only endured. As years passed, the U.S. war stretched on. The Taliban regrouped in the mountains. Corruption devoured the Afghan government. The dream of democracy decayed into a nightmare of occupation. 20 years, over $2 trillion, and hundreds of thousands of lives, all for a war that ended as it began, with the Taliban in power and the world watching in disbelief. In August 2021, the last American soldier left Kabul. The world's strongest military, defeated not by an army but by time. The graveyard had claimed another empire, but history doesn't pause when soldiers leave. It only shifts. When the Americans left, they left behind not just bases and weapons, but a vacuum. And in geopolitics, a vacuum never stays empty for long. The Taliban took control, declaring victory. But while the world debated legitimacy, another power was already watching, quietly, patiently. To the east, China saw opportunity in the chaos. While America's war was measured in blood and dollars, China's war would be fought in silence, through trade, minerals, and infrastructure. The U.S. may have left militarily, but its intelligence networks, economic sanctions, and political influence still lingered. Shadow tools of control. Meanwhile, China began courting the Taliban with promises of investment, seeking access to Afghanistan's rare earth minerals, copper, lithium, cobalt, the very resources that will power the future. For the United States, Afghanistan became a wound. For China, it became a window. Today, Afghanistan stands at the intersection of two visions of power. One, the American, built on military might and strategic dominance. The other, the Chinese, built on trade routes and silent control. The Americans left with broken promises. The Chinese arrived with open checkbooks. Yet both seek the same thing: influence. Afghanistan's people, meanwhile, remain trapped in the middle. For them, the war never ended. It simply changed shape. In the cities, hunger replaced hope. In the mountains, miners dig for foreign companies. Children grow up not knowing peace, only the echo of drones and the whisper of deals made far beyond their borders. Every empire believes it can tame Afghanistan. None have learned that to hold this land is to lose yourself in it. History has a strange gravity. It pulls the powerful back to the same places, to make the same mistakes. Afghanistan is not a prize. It is a test of endurance, humility, and the limits of empire. Empires come to Afghanistan seeking dominance, but they leave with only lessons. Lessons written in stone, in silence, and in sacrifice. The British called it the frontier of civilization. The Soviets, the road to progress. The Americans, the war for freedom. But to the Afghans, it has always been home, a home that cannot be conquered. And yet, as the dust of war settles, new footsteps approach. The next chapter is not written in gunfire, but in silence. The silent return of China and America to the graveyard of empires. When the last American soldier boarded his flight out of Kabul, the world believed the story was over. The empire had fallen silent. But in Afghanistan, silence is never peace. It's the calm before another game begins. Cut to Beijing, towering skyscrapers, the hum of construction, maps glowing across screens showing China's Belt and Road Initiative. As the United States left in defeat, another power was watching. Patient, calculating, and ready to move where others retreated. China didn't need armies to conquer. It had ambition and it had time. This is not the war of drones and troops. It's a war of strategy, fought with trade routes, resources, and influence. A war without sound, without gunfire. A silent war. While the world debated the Taliban's return, Beijing was already making phone calls. Within months of America's withdrawal, Chinese diplomats met Taliban officials behind closed doors, offering promises of trade, recognition, and reconstruction. China's plan wasn't driven by ideology or security. It was driven by resources. Under Afghan soil lies one of the world's richest caches of untapped minerals: copper, cobalt, rare earths, and above all, lithium, the metal that powers electric cars, smartphones, and the global energy transition. To the world, lithium is the future. To China, it is power. China already controls over 70% of global lithium processing and dominates the rare earth supply chain. But its factories crave more, and Afghanistan offers over $1 trillion worth of untouched mineral wealth. In the West, the withdrawal looked like abandonment. In Beijing, it looked like an opportunity. America left a war. China saw an investment. Afghanistan is the missing link in China's grand vision, a land bridge connecting Western China to the Middle East and Europe. Through its deserts runs the future of Beijing's empire, the Belt and Road. But there's a challenge: the Taliban, a government unrecognized by the world, sanctioned by the West, and still haunted by extremism. Yet, for China, that wasn't a deterrent. It was a bargaining chip. Beijing doesn't ask questions about democracy or human rights. It asks only for stability. And in return, it offers what every isolated regime desires: legitimacy. The Taliban, desperate for recognition and cash, welcomed China's offer. In exchange, Beijing secured mining rights, infrastructure deals, and a promise that Afghan soil would never host Uyghur militants threatening Chinese interests in Xinjiang. China's deal was simple: we build, you behave. It was diplomacy wrapped in dollars, sealed with silence. But America never truly leaves its wars. It only changes how it fights them. Though the last troops had left, the U.S. continued to shape Afghanistan's future from the shadows, through intelligence networks, aid control, and diplomatic pressure. The battlefield may have gone quiet, but the tools of control remained: sanctions, surveillance, and soft power. Billions in Afghan assets were frozen by the U.S. Treasury, crippling the Taliban government's ability to function. Humanitarian aid became a tool of leverage, carefully distributed through international organizations rather than Afghan ministries. Washington's message was clear: you may rule Afghanistan, but we still hold its economy. Meanwhile, American drones continued to circle Afghan skies, striking suspected militants, gathering intelligence, and reminding the Taliban that America's reach had not vanished. To the world, America left Afghanistan, but to Afghans, it never really went away. At the same time, U.S. diplomats reactivated their influence across the region, strengthening ties with Pakistan, India, and the Gulf states, nations that border or shape Afghanistan's fate. Every alliance, every base, every dollar spent was part of a broader containment strategy, not against terrorism, but against China. Washington saw Beijing's moves not as reconstruction, but as encroachment, a creeping expansion of Chinese influence into a region once dominated by the West. Afghanistan had become more than a failed war. It was now a chessboard in the new Cold War between the U.S. and China. Caught between two powers, the Taliban now play a dangerous game, one that could define Afghanistan's fate for decades. For the Taliban, China offers recognition and cash. For the U.S. and its allies, aid and conditional legitimacy. Both sides come with strings attached. China promises roads, railways, and mines, but demands silence on its treatment of Muslims in Xinjiang. The West offers humanitarian relief, but demands reforms the Taliban cannot accept. The Taliban leadership, once united in war, now face internal divisions in peace. Some seek partnership with Beijing to rebuild the economy. Others distrust foreign powers, fearing another cycle of exploitation. For 2 decades, the Taliban fought to drive America out. Now they must decide how much of China to let in. Here, beneath the ruins of a 2,000-year-old Buddhist monastery, lies the symbol of Afghanistan's future and its curse. The Mezainak mine, a trillion-dollar treasure trapped in a nation still at war with itself. To extract it would mean wealth. To control it would mean power. But to hand it over to China would mean surrendering sovereignty once more. The Taliban know this, yet hunger, isolation, and desperation leave them little choice. The empire they fought is gone, but a new one is already at their door. As the dust settled, both powers escalated, quietly, strategically, and relentlessly. 2023, China formally appointed an ambassador to the Taliban government, becoming one of the first major nations to do so. It announced plans to integrate Afghanistan into the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, a $60 billion project linking Western China to the Arabian Sea. It was more than an investment. It was a statement that Beijing was ready to do what Washington could not: stabilize Afghanistan through profit, not politics. Meanwhile, the U.S. launched a parallel front, rebuilding its presence through diplomacy and intelligence. Behind the scenes, Washington strengthened its presence in Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, expanded intelligence sharing with India, and increased pressure on Pakistan to curb Taliban influence. The result: a shadow war, where both powers maneuver not through armies, but through influence. Every trade route, every deal, every handshake, another move in the silent game. As China deepened ties, reports surfaced of Uyghur militants hiding in Afghan territory, a threat Beijing could not ignore. At the same time, U.S. intelligence quietly began funding local anti-Taliban groups, fearing the resurgence of terrorism. The same terrain that once swallowed armies now hides ambitions. Every valley, every border crossing, a potential front in the new Cold War. The world no longer hears the thunder of warplanes over Kabul, but the war continues, unseen, unspoken, and unstoppable. China's strategy is simple: win without fighting. Build roads, offer loans, buy loyalty. By the time the world notices, it's already too late. Beijing invests in quiet influence, schools, hospitals, and rail projects. The Taliban showcase these as victories of sovereignty, unaware they are trading short-term relief for long-term dependence. Empires once conquered Afghanistan with armies. Now they do it with contracts. Meanwhile, America's tools are less visible: media, NGOs, sanctions, and surveillance. Every humanitarian initiative doubles as a political lever. Every sanction serves as a reminder of power. China builds presence through proximity. America maintains control through absence. Together, they form the two faces of modern empire: one visible, one invisible. The silent war has no front lines, only fault lines, between East and West, between development and dominance, between survival and sovereignty. Afghanistan, once the stage of global warfare, is now the theater of invisible battles. And the world watches, unaware that the next era of global power may begin right here. The silent return is not just about Afghanistan. It's about the world it connects. Every nation surrounding Afghanistan now aligns or collides with one of the two powers. The old great game is reborn in a new age of geopolitics, where maps are drawn not with borders, but with trade routes. The British and Russians once fought for Afghanistan's passes. Today, the US and China fight for its pathways: digital, economic, and strategic. For now, the guns are silent. But silence in Afghanistan has never meant peace. It means something far more dangerous: preparation. The silent war has begun, and soon the world will realize not every empire needs an army to conquer. For centuries, empires fought with swords, then with soldiers, and now with systems. The battlefield has changed, but the prize remains the same: control. And once again, it all leads back to the same place: Afghanistan. In the 19th century, the British and Russians played the Great Game, a struggle for influence across Asia. Today, that game has returned, but its players are new, its weapons are invisible, and its stakes are global. In the age of empires, power was measured in land. In the age of globalization, it's measured in lanes, the routes of trade, energy, and information that link nations together. China's Belt and Road Initiative forms the spine of this new empire. From the ports of Pakistan to the railways of Central Asia, Beijing's influence spreads silently, wrapped in promises of progress. Through loans and logistics, China builds what armies once conquered, roads that lead not to battlefields, but to dependence. In contrast, the United States counters through alliances, sanctions, and technology, building a digital empire of its own. Silicon Valley and Wall Street have become the weapons of modern geopolitics. Where China offers construction, America offers control, of currency, of cyberspace, of narrative. But between these two giants lies a land that neither can fully claim. Afghanistan, the forgotten heart of the great game reborn. This silent war is no longer about Afghanistan alone. It's about what Afghanistan represents. The intersection of power between East and West, past and future. Afghanistan now sits at the crossroads of competing systems, the Chinese model of economic expansion through infrastructure, and the American model of global dominance through influence. To China, Afghanistan is a gateway. To the Middle East, to vital minerals, and to legitimacy as a global superpower. To the United States, it is a reminder of failure, but also of unfinished business. The U.S. maintains quiet leverage, intelligence bases in Central Asia, economic control over Afghan reserves, and diplomatic alliances with countries surrounding China's Belt and Road. The two powers no longer fight for Afghanistan itself, but for what it unlocks. Access, leverage, and the ability to shape the world order that comes next. As tensions grow, the battle spreads beyond borders. Cyber attacks replace gunfire, satellites replace soldiers. It is a Cold War without the coldness, fought in every trade deal, every newsfeed, every algorithm. 3 empires, 3 exits, 1 lesson unlearned. Afghanistan humbles those who try to possess it. But now, neither the U.S. nor China seeks to occupy the country. They seek to outlast each other. Both learned from history that empires fall not from defeat, but from overreach. The Americans lost a war of presence. The Chinese hoped to win a war of patience. Yet patience has its price. China's grand strategy depends on stability, but Afghanistan remains unpredictable. Insurgencies simmer, rival factions clash, and extremist groups still lurk in the shadows. Beijing wants business, not bullets. But in Afghanistan, commerce often walks hand in hand with conflict, and for the U.S., even absence is dangerous. The vacuum it left risks turning Afghanistan into a Chinese stronghold, a nightmare Washington cannot afford to ignore. Both powers stare at the same map. One sees opportunity, the other sees a warning. The great game is no longer a duel between two powers. It is now a symphony of many. China, the United States, Russia, Iran, India, and Pakistan, each moving pieces across the same board. China deepens its economic presence. Russia seeks influence through energy and arms. Iran eyes trade routes that bypass sanctions. Pakistan juggles loyalties between Beijing and Washington. India, wary of both, builds silent alliances of its own. Afghanistan is no longer a nation in isolation. It is a mirror reflecting the ambitions of the world. Each route, each project, each partnership is a thread in the new web of global power. Whoever weaves it fastest may control the century to come. But beneath this game of giants lies the price paid by the powerless. Afghanistan's people remain trapped in a paradox. A nation rich in resources but poor in relief, promised progress but denied peace. Every empire claims to bring stability, yet leaves behind instability. Every promise of development carries the shadow of dependency. Chinese investments create jobs but also debt. Western aid offers relief but can keep a nation under foreign influence. The ordinary Afghan, the farmer, the miner, the child, becomes a footnote in a global rivalry. In the silence between superpowers, the cries of the people are lost. This is the true heart of the silent war, a conflict not of weapons but of worlds, and it is the innocent who bear its weight. The world stands at a turning point. The old order, built by the West, is fading. A new order, influenced by the East, is rising. And between them lies Afghanistan, as it has always been, the pivot of power. Analysts call it multipolarity, a world where no single power dominates. But in truth, it's the oldest story of all. empires rising, colliding, and repeating their mistakes. The great game is reborn, not in the maps of 1840 or the battles of 1980, but in the markets, minds, and minds of the 21st century. As nations compete for resources, data, and dominance, Afghanistan becomes the test of a question that defines our age. Can power exist without conquest? Can influence exist without war? Perhaps the real battle is not between America and China, but between the past and the future. Empires rise in glory, fall in pride, and return in silence. But Afghanistan remains, scarred, sovereign, and still standing. For the United States, Afghanistan was a lesson in limits. For China, it may become a lesson in patience. And for the world, it is a reminder that no empire, no ideology, no power can ever truly master the human spirit. The great game is not over. It is merely reborn, quieter, colder, and far more complex. Its moves will shape the 21st century and perhaps decide who owns the future. If history teaches us anything, it's that power never truly leaves. It only changes hands. So ask yourself, who's really winning the silent war? Subscribe to Decode Empires and join us as we uncover the hidden battles, the unseen deals, and the forgotten stories that shape our world. Because understanding power is the first step to decoding it.